Theft and Scams teaching with Mr. Pete Lamb. Let's give him a hand. Just want to say how very important this teaching will be. We get about 2 to 3 counselings a month, usually with older, vulnerable older folk that deal with identity theft and scams. It's happened to people in our congregation several times, some people, the same person 2 or 3 times, and most of the time, if not all of the time, we refer those people to Mr. Pete Lamb. So I want to give you a little introduction. I know you guys know that he's a dad, he's a grandpa, he's a husband, he's our drummer, one of our drummers. He's a great inspiration to all of us, and we do lean on him for all things legal from time to time, and so we really appreciate all that he does. So Mr. Pete Lamb has spent 30 years in law enforcement and instructed in many areas, including drug recognition, expert firearms, emergency driving, SWAT, and more. He's taught classes to police, prosecutors, judges, and emergency medical professionals. After retiring from law enforcement, he went to law school and has been prosecuting cases for over 10 years. Cases including identity fraud, child molestation, and homicides. He's been in this walk since 2014, with MTOI since 2017. So he has a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and he's willing and volunteered to share that with us to help to keep us safe and protected, as our motto is. So if you all would just give him a hand and welcome up Mr. Pete Lamb.
Thank you very much. So a lot of this is going to be on PowerPoint. It's death by PowerPoint. So that's how I'm used to teaching. I'm also used to moving around quite a bit when I teach, and it's really not conducive for this and not for this setting. So a lot of what you should see should be on the screen. So as soon as I see that's up, then I'll get started with this. So if you could put the PowerPoint up, and if they can't, this is going to be really complicated. There we go. All right. So can you see that? All right, so here's the bad news. Your stuff is out there. All right, so I don't want anybody thinking that their personal information is not on the dark web. It most certainly is. Your name, your date of birth, probably your address, your social security number, that's out there. And how do I know that? Well, I did some research on data breaches, and one of the things I discovered that the National Public Data Background Check Company suffered a data breach in 2024. The breach may have compromised billions of people, including social security numbers, dates of birth, phone numbers, addresses, and more. And the National Cybersecurity Alliance says that it's likely that everyone with a social security number was impacted. Pay attention to that number, billions of people. So that's going to include people outside this country. It's going to include people in almost every Western country. In addition to that, in April of 2024, AT&T had a data breach that affected millions of customers. They sent emails to their customers and letters to those who were impacted there. Equifax had a data breach in 2017, compromised the personal data of 143 million Americans. Pay attention to that number, 143 million Americans, because you'll see the significance of those high numbers in just a second. Marriott, which is where I'm staying in Cleveland, data breach in 2018 affected roughly 500 million guests, 500 million. But wait, there's more. Yahoo, which you don't hear of much anymore, but all 3 billion of their accounts was affected by that breach. Facebook, which is a more and more frequent target of hackers. In 2019, 540 million of their user records were impacted. Adult Friend Finder, which I guess no one who is watching this or is here today probably has anything to do with that, but in case you do, in 2016, 412 million of their private data accounts were compromised. Anthem, which is also Blue Cross Blue Shield, 2015, 80 million records. And then Target, they had a data breach 11 years ago that compromised 70 million records. So to put it in perspective, and we talked about large numbers of folks, I did research on the last census in 2020. The U.S. population of people 18 or older was 258.3 million. So the data breaches would have affected most certainly everybody 18 or older. What's significant also about this is, though, many parents, when their children are born, one of the first things they do is they get a Social Security number for them. And so that means that many children who are not in the workforce, their Social Security numbers are compromised as well, which means their identities are compromised. So that's something to bear in mind. So the scope of this issue is a lot bigger than I think we normally think. So with all the data breaches, it's almost a certainty that your information has been exposed. So the focus of today is how do you protect that? And how do you keep from becoming a victim of fraud, a victim of identity theft? And there are some very simple ways to do that, and that's what I want to talk about. So I want you to be able to recognize the threats. A lot of these scammers take advantage of the fact that we are very impatient people. We are very quick to respond to things that we should not respond to. So they take advantage of that. I want to talk about some definite do's and don'ts here. I want to talk about phishing and scams and mitigating your vulnerabilities. So that's pretty much what the focus of this is going to be on today. So identity theft goes way back. So I did a biblical search for identity theft. And I found an instance where Jacob and his mom schemed to get their older brother's inheritance. And the plan is for Jacob to pose as Esau. And so the elderly and nearly blind Isaac was fooled into believing that Jacob is Esau, bestows the family fortune and bestows the inheritance to Jacob. And Esau then becomes the victim of identity theft. And Isaac is the victim of exploitation of the elderly. So that's as far back as I could find it. And sure, if you think about it, there's probably some other instances where somebody posed as someone else. Well, never mind, I'm not going to go into that, but there's a bunch of them. All right. Anybody in here not own a cell phone? No. So I only know of one member of the congregation who is completely off the grid. He has an analog watch, and I think his cell phone is not internet connected. He just gets calls on it. But that's a rarity. So pretty much everybody in here has a phone with internet access. You get text messages on it. You can use your social media accounts on it. You get calls on it. You can do all kinds of things. Well, your phone is a gateway. Your phone is just like your personal computer. It's a gateway. It's a way that people can reach you, which if they can reach you, then you're vulnerable. Anybody have their bank account on their phone? So you can do instant banking on your phone. I do. But you need to be able to protect that. You need to be able to protect access to that. But understand that if it's on your phone and your phone gets hacked and they figure out your password, which usually isn't all that hard, they can have access to your bank account. Your social media accounts are usually on your phone or your computer. Your phone carrier account is there. The identities of your friends and relatives are on there. They're on there on your contacts. And for your contacts, you can usually store additional information about them. Their address, their email address, phone numbers for them, work phone numbers for them. Sometimes their social security numbers are on there. So that makes your friends and relatives vulnerable through your phone as well. Email addresses, your physical addresses on your phone. You may, if you have any government ID accounts there, some people have pictures of their driver's license on their phone or access to their you can actually create, with most states, I know in Georgia you can have an account with that agency where you can actually display your license on your phone if you don't have it on your person. Biometric data is on there. If you're using your fingerprint or your eyes, facial recognition to access your phone, that's biometric data, and that's stored on your phone, which is important to know. Personal health data. I know I've got my health information on there. I've got 2 different health accounts that I use to manage my health data when I go to the doctor or need to communicate with my doctor, get a prescription refilled or make an appointment. That's all on there. School records also can be on there as well. And if someone can access your school records, they can also then find out more personal data, personal information about you. As well as that, your age, your gender, your religious association, all that is usually stored somewhere on your phone or your computer. Your job title may be on there. Your salary, that can be acquired. I work for the government, so it's very simple for somebody to look up the list of employees with the Cherokee County, Georgia government. That's who I work for. They can look up my salary. Not crazy about that, but it's public information. Usernames are very often stored on your phone, and if you're not careful about that, if they find your username, then it's just a matter of figuring out what passwords you're using. IP addresses are on there, and cookies. We'll talk about cookies. And good practice to follow with cookies with regard to accessing websites. All right, so how scammers get to you? Well, one of the main ways they get to you is through email. Also through text messages. And when we get to romance scams, I'm going to talk a bit more about text messages because yesterday, it was yesterday morning when I was at the hotel coming here, I got a text message that you get them sometimes. You get an unknown number. It says, hey, I lost my contacts, but I've got this number. Who are you? I just ignored that. But then I got a follow-up, and I'll get into that when I get in romance scams. I haven't told Brenda about this either, and she's watching, so I want to be able to assure her that I'm not going to follow up on that. Robocalls, and good grief, for another couple of weeks we're going to get a lot of those until election comes up. But you get those anyway. You get a lot of those, and there's ways to avoid those and screen those out to where they're not always popping up on your phone. Unsecure Wi-Fi connections. So there is a Wi-Fi connection here that I use, but it's not secure. So an enterprising hacker could detect different phones, different computers that are on that network and possibly have access to your device. So if you're not using a VPN or something like that to protect it, then everything that's on there is vulnerable. So be very careful about unsecure Wi-Fi connections. If you're at a place like Starbucks or someplace like that has a Wi-Fi connection, be very careful about what use you make of your phone, because you don't want to go onto your banking site while you're on an unsecure Wi-Fi connection. Shoulder surfing is something else that we'll talk about. You may not have heard of that. I hadn't heard of that until I got a case as a prosecutor involving identity theft that started with shoulder surfing. So we'll get to that. So let's talk about cookies first. So cookies are things when you go to a website, particularly a commercial website, cookies are used to track you. Some are limited as to what data they collect, and some are more persistent and can involve third parties. But they're usually followed by this pop-up window. It's preceded with a pop-up window that tells you this site uses cookies. And they'll tell you what they use it for, and they'll tell you what their limitations are. If they are going to disclose your information to third parties, they have to tell you that. They have to tell you that. They're required by law to tell you that, and there's some severe penalties for those that don't do that. So be careful about cookies. Where did cookies originate? Something like cookies originated. Everybody remember Radio Shack? Okay, so you remember when you go to Radio Shack and you buy a battery for like 50 cents? What do they ask you at checkout? Want to know your zip code. I was wondering, why does Radio Shack need to know my zip code? Well, they were using it to track their customers. They were using it to see this is the geographic area that our customers are coming from, which helps them then decide whether or not they need to build more Radio Shacks. Well, that's kind of what cookies are. They want to know who their customers are. They want to know where they're coming from. And sometimes they will use that to then determine what their marketing strategy needs to be. So that's part of the reason for cookies. Now, other cookies involve selling information to other parties, but you can opt out of that. And it's a good idea probably to get rid of your cookies once you leave the site. So, but the rules to follow on this with regard to cookies: don't accept cookies when it's at an unencrypted website. So don't accept them. You don't have to accept them. Cookies usually make it easier to navigate through a website the next time you show up there. So all your searches, like for example, Amazon stores cookies. So they keep track of, what stuff you were looking for before, what stuff you bought before. So it makes it a little easier for you or for their customers to navigate those sites. But don't accept cookies when you're at an unencrypted website. And remember what I said earlier, that part of the reason that the scammers and some of these folks are able to get to you so quickly is because they're relying on you being a bit lazy and not wanting to go the extra mile to protect yourself. So it's kind of a pain in the neck to have to delete all your cookies each time and then start over again when you go back to the same site over and over. But in the long run, you're a little bit better protected that way when you do that. Also, don't accept cookies when you're entering any personal information at suspicious sites. And suspicious sites may be ones who want you to do a survey after you've made a purchase. Maybe a place that you haven't been to before. It may be some off-brand site that you were looking for something and you couldn't find it anywhere else, but you found it during a web search at this particular place, so you buy it. That's when you need to be careful about entering personal information. And I can't think of any of those off-brand sites, but for example, sometimes if you're looking for something and you can't find it on Amazon, you may go to Etsy or you may go somewhere else. So be very careful about those sites if any of them are suspicious. And sometimes your software may alert you to those places. So pay attention to that. So you should regularly clear cookie data, and it's a very simple process to do that on your computer, on your browser. There's usually in the settings you can clear all your history data or your cookie data as well. All right, so tactics used by thieves. Well, one of the things they like to do in their emails is to incite fear. They want you to think that there's some reason you have to act immediately on this. Something really bad is going to happen if you don't act on this immediately. It can be that your account's going to shut down. It can be perhaps that somebody's about to come arrest you for something. That's usually the case on calls where you get a call from somebody saying, I'm Officer Billy Jackson with the Bradley County Sheriff's Office, and you missed jury duty, and we're coming to get you unless you buy gift cards for $50. There are people that fall for that stuff. So that's one of the tactics used, is to incite fear. Something really bad is going to happen if you don't act on it. It can be a loss of money. That is usually the case. And inciting fear can also be in terms of something. You get an email from Norton saying, thank you for your purchase of $299. We appreciate your business and come back again. Well, I didn't spend that money, so I'm afraid, oh my God, I'm out, $300. And so you act on that. Fear of arrest, we talked about. Fear of danger to others, those are grandma scams, which are fairly frequent. There's been a lot of them in Florida that I'm familiar with. There have been some in the jurisdiction I'm at. And with the increase in the use of artificial intelligence, this is only going to get worse. The way the grandma scam works is usually somebody receives a phone call from somebody either posing as a personal injury attorney, or posing as a police officer, or they're posing as somebody in emergency medicine, saying your granddaughter, your relative, your so-and-so has been involved in this horrible thing. They're either arrested or they need emergency medical treatment, or we need this money right away. And in some cases, they will actually have the voice of that person, that victim, that child that you're interested in, actually have their voice or something that sounds very close to it, pleading for help. People get taken by that because it's so immediate. It's something they feel they have to act on right away, that they do everything that person tells them to do, and they send money to that person, and it turns out to be a scam. And again, with the problem with artificial intelligence is that if you have those people's voices on your phone, or if you have them recorded in your social media, for example, if I know Mr. Bishop's Facebook account and I can access his account, he may have videos of his children or grandchildren on there where I can capture their voice. And if I can capture their voice, then through artificial intelligence, I can have that voice say whatever I want it to say. So if I want to contact Mr. Bishop and have his granddaughter saying, I need $5,000 right away or I'm going to get locked up, Mr. Bishop, if he's not discerning, may go ahead and send $5,000 to Officer Billy Jackson with the Bradley County Sheriff's Office at P.O. Box so-and-so. So that's happened. So that's something to be aware of. They create a sense of urgency in addition to that, and that's sometimes related to inciting fear, but can be different. They focus on the need for security, and that's very important for some of these scams, particularly those scams where they will gain access to your computer. One of my favorite YouTube channels is a guy known as Perogi is his name, but the website is Scammer Payback on YouTube. And I've learned a lot about how they operate, because the way they operate, and we'll get into more detail of that, but the way they operate is they you follow up to an email from the scammer, and follow up usually through an email, but sometimes by a phone call. Once they get you on the phone, they assure you that they are with PayPal or Norton or wherever they're from, that they're with the security division, and they're going to straighten all this whole thing out. They just need you to log on to anydesk.com to where they can have access to your computer so they can reverse those charges straight on your bank. You don't have to wait any time at all. But they will tell you when eventually they want you to send them money, they will focus on the need for security. They're going to have you go to the bank and withdraw a large sum of money, and be sure not to tell anybody there what you're doing, because the banks are aware of this, and the banks will try to stop you. Even in some cases where they'll have you go buy a large number of gift cards, a lot of the places that do a lot of business in gift cards are familiar with that, and they will challenge purchases of large amounts of that. But the scammers will focus on the need for secrecy there. They'll say that there's some benefit to you for this. Usually it's monetary. It can be a business or job opportunity. If you're dealing with a headhunter type site where your resume is out there, if they have gained access to those records, they may contact you and say, we've got this business opportunity for you or job opportunity, and all we need you to do is send us this money to get the ball rolling, and we'll get going. So that's a very typical scam there. Romance scams. So let me tell you about the romance scam I got. So I got this email or text message. And the message was, I just restored my iCloud contacts and saw an unfamiliar number. I'm not sure if I know you. What should I call you? So I have an app on my phone where I can look up phone numbers. So I looked up the phone number associated with this number, and there was no name associated with it, but it said the address that came back was in South San Francisco. So I don't know anybody in South San Francisco, nor do I want to. So I deleted that and reported it as junk, thinking that would be the end of it. But no, no. They persisted. So then last night, I got a follow-up text message. It said, hello, why don't you reply to my message? I think it's disrespectful to others. So please reply to me. Maybe you forgot about me. This is my photo. And they included a photo of this very attractive Asian female, okay, who I especially have no interest in connecting with at all. But it occurred to me that if I am a somewhat desperate single male, I would absolutely respond to this photo. And so that's the scam. That's how it starts. Is they're going on greed, they're going on desperation and stuff like that. And so I can tell you how this would work. If I responded to that and say, I'm so-and-so, they say, oh, I don't know you, but I'd like to get to know you. And then as the relationship develops, she's going to tell me she's from Sichuan province in China, and she wants to get over here, and she wants to go to school, and she wants to increase our relationship, and all she needs is some money to get over here. And that'll go on for a while, and I'll get milked for money, or whoever gets milked for money after that. And eventually it turns out I'm out several $1,000s from somebody I will never meet. Okay, so that's how it goes. But some romance scams start that way. They start through a social media contact. You may get a friend request, which be very careful about, and I'll talk about that because I cleared 6 felonies on a Facebook account that I had access to through a search warrant. But those things start that way. They start through email or text message or social media contacts. You got to be very careful about those. They will act from a place of authority. Either they're with tech support with PayPal or Geek Squad or Norton or Venmo. They can claim to be from a law enforcement or other government agency. There's a pretty good video on YouTube of a police captain getting a call at work from somebody posing as the FBI, saying they were coming to arrest them because they were money laundering. It's stupid stuff, but people fall for it. Or they'll pose as a legitimate business. So pretexting. Pretexting is more common in the workplace. And if you work for a company that has more advanced IP or IT folks, they're pretty good about detecting a lot of this stuff. We go through a lot of training in Cherokee County with this. But the pretexting usually involves some email saying, we need to update your password or your computer is out of date. Please give us your username and password so we can do that. Don't fall for that. So in this case, it's just like I said, you get a call from an IT or an IT service to report your computer isn't connecting properly. Again, it's more common in the workplace, but it can happen to you on your home computer too. If you get something posing from Microsoft, for example, I think that's the first real example I'm going to show you is one that came from Microsoft saying your software is out of date, your account's out of date, and we're going to cancel your account unless you click on this link to update your password. So there's that. And again, they'll ask for information they shouldn't be asking for in order to verify the connection. So overpayment scams. So these are the ones that the Scammer Payback and some other folks deal with. So usually how this works is you'll get an email from a company where the sender will pose as either Amazon, PayPal, Norton McAfee, Venmo, or any number of companies. They contact you usually by email. In some of these cases, they'll say your identity's been stolen, several accounts have been opened, and charges made. It's either that or they're going to verify the renewal or purchase of a subscription or other merchandise. Has anybody gotten anything like that? Okay, I see a couple of hands there where you get that. Now, I'm going to show you ways how you can detect that, how you can determine whether or not that's legit. Because sometimes if indeed you have made that purchase, you'll get an email confirming the purchase. But the scammer emails, they will use Amazon or PayPal or Norton or Venmo. They will use their logos, and they will have all that information on appearance, on first impression. It looks like it's legitimate. But there's a way to check that out, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And they'll say there's some issue with your account that needs to be corrected. So what they'll have you do is make contact with them. And so they will pose as security for, say, Norton or security for PayPal and say that we're going to get this straightened out. So they need you to be on your computer, and they'll link to something like anydesk.com. What anydesk.com is, once you link to that, you put in a code, you give a code to the other side, they enter that code, and now they have access to your computer. And once they have access to your computer, they can do anything with it. They can change the appearance of your computer completely. Then they'll have you linked to your bank site. They are on your computer when you link to your bank site. Once they do that, they have that, and then they are going to completely take over your computer. Your computer screen will go blank, so you can't see what they're doing. And then what they will do is they will change how your bank site looks to you. They change the page, and they will change the page to show deposits or withdrawals from that, whatever they want it to be. And then they will have you enter into a separate screen the amount of the refund you're supposed to get. But something bad is going to happen. And so what bad is going to happen for them is the amount that you are crediting through them is going to be, instead of $500, it'll be $5,000 or $50,000. And they will say, oh, you did this. Oh, this is horrible. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to get fired. We've got to get this money back. So, and in actuality, this has not happened. They know what your bank balance is. So their goal is to wipe out your balance. So whatever number they're going to put in there thinking you have credited them, it's going to be money you've got there. It's not going to be additional money. It's going to be money. So let's say you've got $10,000 in your bank account. Well, if they want $5,000, they're going to make it look like in your bank that you've got $50,000. But they want their money back. Well, it's not their money. It's your money. So they're going to have you go to the bank and withdraw that. So they put the excessive amount in your account. They realize their mistake, ask you to withdraw money in cash, because this is money laundering, and then send it to them. And this happens, and people fall for this stuff. And so they'll say, I'm going to the bank. And then usually they again, secrecy. They don't want you telling the bank why you're withdrawing $5,000. The last time I withdrew a large amount of money was for stuff related to the feast, and the bank asked me, what are you withdrawing this money for? Which they're supposed to do, because if it turns out to be fraud and if you report it appropriately, they should make good on that. But if you're not forthcoming with them, then they may not. Some larger scamming operations actually have operatives in this country at major cities. And what they will do is they will say, okay, our representative is going to meet you at the bank in the parking lot, or they're going to meet you at FedEx, or they're going to meet you at Bob's Vape Shop, or wherever it is. They're going to have to hand over that money to them. That's scary. That's scary. But that is also what some scammers are currently doing. All right. So romance scams, victims are catfished and induced to send money. Again, the things we talked about for legal expenses, hospital bills, start a business, get out of bankruptcy. I got an email, and I'll show it to you, the other day from a guy, Mr. Udil in Kenya, whose relative is out a bunch of money, and he wants me to open up an account here so we can get access to his money, stuff like that. Law enforcement scams, somebody posing as a law enforcement officer phones you to claim you've got an unpaid ticket or failed to appear for jury duty. There's actually people posing as Homeland Security wants to verify your ID regarding criminal allegations of aiding terrorists. Homeland Security is not going to call you. If Homeland Security is genuinely interested in something you're doing, they're going to come see you, and they're going to have credentials and ID, and then even then you should verify that. It's not hard to do that. Spam. So spam is really different than phishing and everything else. Spam is just unsolicited email. It usually comes when you're using email or forwarding an unofficial email. So spam is not something you need to be worried about. Once you put that in your junk folder, that's usually where it'll go every time. Phishing. So I'll give you an example of phishing. So Betty gets an email that appears to be from her bank with the subject line, account hacking. So she clicks on the link and provides her username, account number, and password. The hacker now has complete control over her account, can lock her out, change the password, and prevent Betty from making changes. Sometimes that control can happen without a phishing email for people that are simply going through Facebook accounts and doing that. It happened to Rabbi Steve on his Facebook account. All right, so here's an example of phishing. So some things to look for. So this supposedly comes from Microsoft Outlook. And pay attention to this. So this is MS Outlook 94 at service.outlook. But actually that's a 1. So that's out1ook.com. So that's a lookalike. So that right there should tip you off that something's not right about this. So then it's telling the receiver the password for Microsoft Outlook account, and that's been blocked out, has expired. So it says for your security, Current password will have to be changed. That's suspicious. So there's a bunch of things here. Let's talk about this exactly. So first thing it tells you is your password has expired. It'll cease to work shortly. Well, wait a minute now. If it's expired, it shouldn't work at all. Okay? So that should be a red flag. You're now required to change your password immediately, although it's already expired and will cease to work shortly. So the link to click doesn't match the one you're actually clicking. So let me go back. So the link's down here, and it's kind of hard to see, and I think I do it on the screen though, but the link you actually click does not match the one up here. So the one link said msoutlook.service.outlook, but then the other one was mssservice.out1ook.com. So what they've done is they've masked where your link is going to, which is giving the hacker access to your information. So it's those kinds of things that you need to pay attention to. You need to, instead of freaking out and clicking the link because you have to act immediately, no, take your time and look at it. All right, email threats. They may appear to be from legitimate sources. We talked about that, Amazon, PayPal, Norton. I've gotten them from all of these, and I'll show you the examples of the ones I got. I got one from Chase too. So haven't got one from an employment service. Of course, I haven't been on the market for a while. I'm fortunate to be able to get employment wherever I want. So praise Yah. So things you should do: investigate first. Do not be quick to click on things. Some do's and don'ts. Don't click on links until you have investigated. Don't click on links until you have investigated. Don't open attachments. Don't open attachments. Opening an attachment works the same as clicking on a link. Once you do that, it enables the hacker to embed something in your computer that you're not going to be able to get rid of, short of just wiping your computer. Do be suspicious of all email. Don't assume that the email you're getting is from who it appears to be. Don't assume that just because it looks close to what you've gotten before that that's who it is. So be suspicious of all email. Be careful of graphics on the message that may appear as a speck of dust or hair. That's something new that hackers are using on their emails. So they'll have something on the face of it that looks like a speck of dust or hair, and you'll go to wipe it off your screen, and actually what you've done is clicked on something. So if you see something on your screen that looks like a speck of dust or hair, change the screen. Go back to something else. Because if that speck or that hair is not on that, then that's what that was. Okay? So be careful about that. That's something new that they're doing now that I hadn't run across before, but I've learned about. All right, so investigate first for email. Investigate first by verifying the sender. So I get a lot of these from MyGov. So I've got a MyGov account for Social Security and Medicare and some other stuff. Also had it when I had a school loan, federal loan. So MyGov is, in this country is where you would go to create those accounts. So I got this notice from MyGov notification, inbox message, you have a new correspondence in your MyGov inbox. Click to view. Should you click? No. So up here, the MyGov.notification. So what you can do is you can click on that. You can put your cursor, your mouse or whatever it is over that, and that will tell you who it's from. But also notice in here, and it's hard to read, but the who it's sent to here is not my email address. So that's important too. So some red flags here. This wasn't sent to me, but it wasn't originally sent to me as the intended receiver, but I was one of several thousand people that this was sent to. And it wants me to click on a link. So that's suspicious. So how do I investigate this? Well, so that MyGov.notification, so I checked that out, and that turned out to be mygov. It's the squiggly line notification, where notification is misspelled. That's a problem. Government agency usually isn't going to misspell a word. So that's what it looked like. So that was notification. Check the email address there. And I think I've got it added here. All right. So when you go back, so the one that's in the blue border there, that's what that is. It's MyOGVNOFNOTIFIA. That doesn't make any sense at all. But that's the return email address for the sender at t-online.de. So I will tell you that spelling errors are very common in phishing. So if you find a spelling error in either the return email or in the text of the message, that's a clue. Also, the DE at the end of the URL originates from Germany. So that's a concern. And you can look up these .de. It might be any of those. You can do a search and it'll tell you where that's coming from. And also, I did some check on MyGov. That's actually delivered by Services Australia. Now, I don't know why anybody in Australia thinks that I would have an account there, other than I helped Ollie with some of his immigration stuff, but I don't think he gave any of my personal information to anybody. That's the only link I have to Australia and MyGov services. So, spotted that. They didn't get me that time. But then again, I got something from the Australian Taxation Office. So, check that one out. Inbox message, missing information, that a link they want me to click to update my information. I checked that email address, and that return is Tripper Wildpaw at iCloud. Well, that's obviously not a government email, so that was obviously a phishing attempt. Then I got one from Alexander Udil. Good day, I'm Alexander Udil, and contacting you to assist in retrieving this huge deposit the late Mr. Ron left in the bank before it gets confiscated by the bank. If you wouldn't mind, get back with me for further clarification on payment procedures. There are people that fall for that. It's obviously an attempt to get inside my bank account. All right, Amazon. I got one from System Administrator, Amazon, account cancellation notice. Oh my goodness, my Amazon account is being canceled. And of course, there's a link for me to check there. So, what do you think is the most prudent first step to take here if you get this email? Should it be to click on the link? No. So what I did is I went directly to my Amazon account. And it wasn't canceled. It was fine. There's no problem with it. So this was obviously phishing. But for people that are in a hurry, and I guess for some folks who are doing a lot of shopping around any particular time of year, they may click on this out of panic, which is, again, one of the tactics they use to do this. So let's see what jumps out here. So one of the beginning of this message is esteemed member. So esteemed member, that's awful nice of Amazon to think that highly of me, that I'm an esteemed member. But I don't think Amazon really communicates with people that way. Then there was the text of the message. An undisclosed attempt to access your account has been made. Well, wait a minute. If it's an undisclosed attempt, then how do they know about it? It doesn't make any sense. So there was stuff there that and then there's the action to take right there. So what not to do: don't click on the link. Don't call the number if a number is provided. Sometimes the return address, return email will be no reply, okay? Which for a lot of things looks legitimate. A lot of legitimate emails come back no reply if they're just notifying you about something, and they'll provide a number instead. Don't call the number, don't click on the link. What to do: investigate the URL, which I did, and check the account yourself, which I did. So they didn't get me that time. And report it to Amazon. So Amazon and a lot of these places on their websites has a way to report this, and they sometimes want you to actually forward the email to them so they can investigate it. So that's very good. There are others, a lot of government websites, Social Security. I can't think of all. I'll get to them. I'll list them towards the end. But a lot of these companies have ways for you to report these phishing attempts directly to them. I know my bank, Truist did. Amazon did. I've had some others where I've forwarded them the emails. So that works. All right. Another one from System Administrator. So I checked this email address. The information for this one was info@chandlerauto.com. Well, I don't think that's their Chandler Auto is the system administrator for anything. So that was obviously bad. And it's not a correct email address for Amazon's system administrator. But again, people are relying on you not doing your homework. They're relying on you not investigating and very quickly checking that link, which if you do, you're hooked. And it's going to be very difficult to get out from under that because they can be very, very convincing on the phone that they are who they say they are. Again, report that to Amazon phishing and reassess the email using a computer. A couple of the anti-scammer folks have recommended that double check the email on a computer. So sometimes if you can't pull up who it's coming from on your phone, go to your computer if you have your email on your computer and double check it that way. This is what Amazon tells you when you go to their site there to report it. They will have options that you can click on, believe me, if you're going to the Amazon site to report phishing. These are links you can click, and so each one of these options are there, so they're wanting to help you or wanting to discover what, if any, danger their account holders are in. And so those are all the options there that you haven't shared any information or you have shared account information, whether or not you've shared any banking information or given remote access to the computer and other information. So they're very proactive in that regard. You got one from Venmo. This was pretty good. This one took me a while to figure out was not legitimate. So this tells me that Joshua Bray requests $99.99 and then says I paid him that money for cryptocurrency, which I did not do using Venmo. This amount will be auto-deducted every month. That's real bad. This is not authorized by you. Call Venmo customer service. Very good. There's a number. So that's good. So that's something you can research as to whether or not that number is Venmo customer service. I did that. I also immediately went to my Venmo account to see if there were any charges to Joshua Bray for cryptocurrency, and there were not. So that's where this starts. Now, towards the bottom, there's also a link down there, which I think may show up on here, to unsubscribe. Again, that's a link. You don't want to do this. If this is suspicious, you don't want to click any links at all on there. The return address, I think, is no reply. I don't remember. Anyway, that's a highlighted version of this. So right here, I've got the cursor. That's where it says unsubscribe. Let me go back. Right there. So I didn't do that. The address is legit for Venmo. So here's what I did here. What not to do, don't click on the link and don't call the number. So I investigated the URL. The URL was actually Venmo@venmo.com. So they had spoofed that. So I checked the account myself and reported to Venmo and check your Venmo account. So the email provided this number, 866-972-5754. So I checked what Venmo says their customer service numbers were, and they gave me two entirely different numbers. So that kind of tipped me off there. Well, but the main thing was that there was no such debit or any expense on my Venmo account. All right, and then there was another one. Yeah, the Venmo, so that was a spoofed email address. And notice that they don't want you to respond because it's no reply. So they don't want you to respond to that. Because if you did, it would go nowhere. So they don't want you to respond. They want you to click on a link or click the unsubscribe button, which makes no sense. Why would there be an unsubscribe link to Venmo? Because you're not subscribing. It's a payment app. So that didn't make any sense. All right. So yeah. And of course there was a link there to go ahead and pay Joshua, which, sorry, Joshua, not today. All right. So this is what actually started this whole thing with me. I got an email from the Elementor team. It said your mtoi.org plugin has a new update. Anybody here have an mtoi.org plug-in? No. I said, well, that's odd. Never heard of such a thing. So I started checking on that. Of course, there's a link they want you to click. So I don't have an mtoi.org plugin. mtoi.org is a thing. We all know that. It's a web address for mtoi. Said it's a critical update. So you got to be careful about that. Sense of urgency there. You have to act on it immediately. There's a link for me to click to access my WordPress account, which I don't have. So this is obviously a phishing expedition on their part, and an additional click to apply the update. So what did I do? I called MTOI. Said, hey, Elder Billy, you know anything about an mtoi.org plugin? Nope. So I forwarded him the email so him and Rabbi Steve could look at it. And I don't remember if they sent anything out telling folks to be aware of that. Did anybody else besides me get that email? Yeah, I see one in the back. A couple of folks got it. I don't know. I don't know how they singled us out. I don't know. I don't know that I'll ever know. But there are things you do. But see, if they've targeted you, if they found out something about you linking them to that, then they're going to seize on that as a way to get to you. So I researched the sender. So Elementor team. So the email address for that is harris@revertgrowth.cc. Never heard of .cc, didn't know what that was. So I found out the CC URL is a country code, top-level domain, that was originally assigned to the Cocos Keeling Islands, which is an Australian territory in the Indian Ocean. However, it has become a popular generic domain extension that anyone can register for any purpose. Well, that's suspicious. So hackers can use that .cc URL for nefarious purposes. All right, so then I got something from Chase, which I don't have. Yeah, I do have an account with them. I don't bank with them, but I have a card with them. So confirm you made this purchase. I think just about everybody here has probably got some kind of email confirming a purchase you didn't make. All right. So there's a link to click there. Yes, I recognize it, or no, something's wrong. So of course they want you to click on the no, something's wrong. So the link is provided for you to sign into your Chase account, which if you've got one, that's real bad, because that link is not going to be for you to sign onto your account. It's going to be provide that information to the scammer so he has access to your account. Then there's another one I got from the Chase Card Help Desk. I researched that sender, and that turned out to be busanan@wh.comufa.jp. Doesn't sound like Chase to me. Got another one from Terry Food. So Terry Food was thanking me for my purchase of a bunch of money there, and they wanted me to click to confirm that. So I checked the number, the 1-843-268-0502. I've got an app that allows me to research numbers, and it'll tell me if it's a domestic line or a commercial line, and will give me the information, just like caller ID. So Terry Food, that email address is that, which was no reply at messaging.squareup.com. Hadn't heard of SquareUp. So I decided to check some stuff. I had a review and sign link, which of course you're not going to do. The phone number is actually a domestic one, but they had an address for Terry Food at the bottom. So the address provided in the email for Terry Food, so I looked up the address. You can You can go on the Google Maps and enter an address, and it'll show you what the place looks like. There it is. There's Terry Foods in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Yeah, I don't think so. I didn't put the address here. I had it there one time, but I thought I might get in trouble if I tell everybody where this house is. So, but it's enough to know that's supposedly the address for Terry Foods. Yeah, didn't buy that. All right. So then Amanda Parker, who's the chief financial officer with the city council somewhere, is sending me money back that I paid in taxes. Of course, I didn't pay them any money in taxes, but greedy people would click on this to facilitate the reimbursement of their money. Then everybody, I think, has gotten something from USPS telling that their package delivery was delayed and there's stuff you got to do in order to get your package. Yeah, those are all scams. They're all scams. Okay. So there's something they want you to reply there to do that. Of course, you know, if you got a package, you can check your tracking data and verify it that way. But the email address for that was gmvwa1166@gmail, which is not going to be USPS. So preventative steps to take. And if any of you after this want me to show you how to verify an email address on your phone, I can easily do that. It's not really practical to do here, but I can show you that. So one thing you need to be doing fairly regularly is checking your credit report. Because it's entirely possible you've got debits and stuff on your credit report you don't know about, some reoccurring payments. You should check your bank account as well for those things that pop up. I had no, why are we paying, X, $25 every 3 months? What's this for? So that's a good way to keep up. But your credit report and your bank statements, you should be frequently reviewing those. Review your statements from all other bills to make sure you're not paying for something you're not getting. Sign up for online access to government accounts. I know that there's some vulnerability to hackers there, but what I would like to see people get away from doing is using paper mail, avoiding using your mailbox. I can't tell you how many identity theft cases I've had that originated from stolen mail. Because if they're stealing, if once you put that flag up, it's telling the thief there's something out there possibly worth taking. So if you're paying checks by mail and the flag's up, somebody ride by, take that check out of the mail, can wash it and create new checks with it and write new amounts, and that money will be out of your account days or weeks before you realize what has hit you. That happens a lot with stolen mail. There's a case I worked that originated out of Atlanta where there was a ring of people going through subdivisions stealing mail. Not only mail going out, but mail coming in with bills, because bills have account information. Be real careful about deliveries, about receipts that are supposed to be left to you. We had something delivered from a Best Buy, and Best Buy very often uses contract folks to make deliveries, and they're not always very particular about what they do with their trash. Well, they dumped a bag of trash on my property, and I went through it and found an invoice to another customer that had all their personal information on it. That's real bad. So be careful about that. But one of the ways to avoid being a target of postal office or paper mail scam is to have online access to your accounts. And most of these are pretty secure, most of them. But even then, you have control over your username and password. And if you're observing good practices there, then you can avoid being taken that way as well. Get a background check done on yourself. Find out if somebody else is using your name, using your identity. It's not a bad idea. And keep Find My Phone activated. So if you happen to misplace yours, you can do that. I don't very often lose my phone, but I'm related to somebody who does on occasion. And so that's been helpful. Love you, baby. It's also a good idea to freeze your credit. I've got a thing on my phone, a service on my phone where I can freeze my credit. If you freeze your credit, even if your identity is stolen, they're not going to be able to open an account in your name with your date of birth, social security number. Credit will be frozen. They shouldn't be able to. Now, I have run across situations where a guy goes into a car dealership on a Sunday afternoon about 2 hours before closing, where sometimes systems are down, and they'll purchase a $50,000 vehicle using somebody else's ID, writing a check that's no good, and drive off with the car, only for the dealership to discover the next day that they got took or taken. But freezing or thawing your credit can protect your resources, so that's a good idea. Now, of course, if you go out to want to buy something, open an account for something, you'll have to unthaw that. But that's really simply just clicking a button on your app for that. Update your passwords. Do not use the same password for more than one account. Don't use derivations of that same password on more than one account, and update them at least yearly. So you should have a different password for every account you've got. That's hard to keep up with, but again, it's our laziness that often makes us vulnerable to attack. Use multi-factor identification on devices. And for anybody that's not familiar with that, some accounts want multi-factor, which means once you log in and you enter your username and password, if they don't recognize the device that you're signing on with, they will send a text message or an email to a device they do recognize and ask you to enter a code there in order to gain access. That's very good. So a lot of professionals recommend using multi-factor identification on devices. Apply software updates. Don't let those lag. Apply those when they come up. And guard or protect your information. So don't write stuff down where people have access to it. And store passwords securely. All right, let's talk about social media. You should make your social media accounts private. You should make them private. Don't provide personal information unless you started the conversation with a trusted source. So if you get an instant message from somebody you don't recognize, be very careful about how that conversation progresses. Independently verify the sources when you can. And use a P.O. box instead of your mailbox. Again, because you're leaving yourself very vulnerable to having your information, your account stolen. Log out of websites when you're done. Be careful about what you share online. And there's one in particular I'm looking for when I get to it. I know I made a note. Don't announce your travel plans or schedule on Facebook. If your account is not private, and you told everybody on social media, okay, I'm going to Cleveland, I'll be gone 10 days, woo, can't wait. If somebody has access to your account and they can figure out your address, what do you think is going to happen to your house? That also is common in obituaries, where there are people that will scan obituaries looking for very rich people who have passed on, get their address, figure out when the funeral is, and then the house gets hit. So be very careful of announcing your travel plans or your schedule on anything anybody has access to. All right, this is the one. Friend requests. So I was prosecuting an aggravated assault case, and the victim in that case had met this guy through Facebook. The defendant had sent her a friend request. They texted back and forth several times. He kept trying to meet her. She kept putting him off. His frustration building, and she kept essentially leading him on. Finally, at one point, he decided he was going to come see her, got her address, brought her food. She met him at the car outside her house, got the bag of food, and said, all right, see ya. And as she's walking back into her house, he started shooting at her. So that was my case. It was an aggravated assault case. So since I knew that Facebook figured prominently in this case, I got a search warrant for his Facebook account because I wanted all the text messages that had been exchanged between them since day one. Well, his Facebook account had 3,000 pages of text messages. And so I started going through all of them and discovered that his tactic was he would have friends that he knew. He would research their friends and then send friend requests to those people and then try to initiate relationships with those people, specifically targeting underage females. Specifically. He must have contacted 25 different ones, and within a few messages, he was hitting them up for sex. Within a few. Finding out where they lived. I want to come see you. This is what we're going to do. And almost all the time, he was rebuffed. But at least 6 girls gave in. I ended up with 6 additional statutory rape cases out of that one case, based solely on researching his Facebook account. So be very careful with your kids who they accept friend requests from. Be careful who you accept a friend request from. Because you don't know their motives. You don't know what's behind it. Maybe a romance scam. It may be something, you don't know what their motives are. So be very, very, very careful about accepting a request from somebody you've never met. Now, if you've met them and you've interacted with them here or something, you're probably okay. Probably, okay? But be very careful otherwise. So that stood out to me, and actually he's doing a lot of time in prison right now as a result of his activities. All right, some more preventative steps to take. Use a password formula or password manager. Password managers can be good. They can be good. They're good ones, so do some research there. I think Microsoft has some stuff built in. Some phones, Apple phones, have their own password managers. Those are probably okay. But if you want to use a formula for it, for example, have a word that is unique to you that you'll remember, that you can preface your password with, and then for the account, if you're going to name that account something, example, if you're going to name an account, say, just call it your Amazon account, you're going to name shopping. Then use a number for your vowels and consonants or different letters, or use the QWERTYs, use the ampersands and stuff like that. So if you want every S to be a certain number, you can do that. If you want every vowel to be a certain something else, you can do that. But it needs to be something you are going to remember, that formula, and you can apply that formula to every password. So every password is then unique, and it follows some formula that you can remember. That's the best way to go about that. If possible, use a QWERTY symbol like the asterisk or an ampersand or something like that, and apply that formula to all your passwords. And that way your passwords are much, much more secure and harder to break. But again, fairly regularly, at least once a year, you should go back and redo them. Yeah, because your passwords are likely to be stolen. I got the app I've got let me know that a password from a shopping site I used, it was Cafe Press. My username and password ended up on the dark web, but I haven't used them in 15 years, so I'm not really worried about it. I don't have that account anymore. All right. While shopping out in public, all right, ladies, guard your purse and wallet. I cannot tell you how many times I've been to Costco or Walmart or Target or any of those places, and I see women walking away from their purse in the shopping cart, and it's open. So got to be very careful about that. Very bad. It should be on you and zipped up at a minimum. Zipped up. One of the cases I worked was a lady who was shopping in Walmart at the grocery thing. She had left her purse just like you see it in that bottom right corner of the picture there. Thief walked in, took her wallet, took her credit cards, went right down 2 doors down to Best Buy and bought $6,000 worth of stuff with her credit cards. Now, fortunately, her credit card company notified her husband that his wife had just spent $6,000 at Best Buy. But by that time, thief is out the door with the merchandise. Okay, it's too late. Now they got their money back because they reported it, But this is how it happens, and that's how quickly it can happen. All right, shoulder surfers. So shoulder surfers are people that are going to be standing near you at an ATM or at Starbucks. They're going to watch for you to enter a website and see what your username and password is. And you will never know they're doing it. So be very cognizant, be aware of that. But a couple of cases I've got involved shoulder surfing, where that's exactly what they were doing. They were hanging around places where they would access that information. So they're looking for you to text information or making purchases in a public space, you entering your login information on a mobile device. And again, if you're on an unsecured network, it's not hard for them to gain access to your device there. Also filling out forms that require personal information, both paper and online. So be careful about that. I'm also real particular about if I'm going to a doctor's office or I'm going anywhere at all where they're asking me for that information in public. I don't like that. I don't like me revealing my date of birth or social security number where anybody else can hear it. That's just not a good idea. So, I'll tell you, I'll write it down and here it is. You copy it down, then give me that piece of paper back. So be proactive about doing that. They're not intending to jeopardize your identity, but again, it's your identity. It's not theirs. What do they care? And again, connecting devices to free unsecured Wi-Fi networks and logging into accounts. Again, how many of you have made a purchase over the phone using your credit card and have given your credit card information to somebody on the phone? Yeah, just about everybody's done that. Okay, be careful about who is around when you do that. Okay, because they want all your numbers, they want all those digits, they want to know your 3-digit code, they want to know your expiration date. And if you've given that out where anybody else has it, they write it down. It's as good as theirs. It's as good as theirs. So be careful about that. Be careful about discussing personal information on the phone in public or making purchases over the phone. Be careful about keying in a PIN in an ATM or any point of sale device. We've gotten to the point now where we're using our credit card with a chip now in that, so we're not entering a PIN or any of that, which tends to be much more secure. So now if you're a victim, gather proof. If you're a victim, there's going to be a date or a set of dates that are going to be listed there. So go back and see where you were and what you were doing on those dates. Gather proof to prove it's fraud, that it wasn't you that made that purchase. You can do that often by your calendar. That if you can prove, well, I was in Albany, Georgia on October 17th. I wasn't in Cleveland, Tennessee then, so it couldn't have been me making that purchase. And you can do that through receipts. And, obviously we use our cards a lot and they document where we are and when. So that's one of the things, location. And then if you find that you are the victim of fraud, file a report with law enforcement. Make that call and then record the case number, because if you talk to somebody, if they took a report, there should be a case number. So document who it was, who the officer was you spoke with, and what is the case number for that event, for that incident. Contact the account issuer. It's your credit card. Contact them. Be proactive about that. And I'll tell you, a lot of fraud, we've called our bank a couple of times for charges we didn't recognize, we couldn't identify it. So we called the bank, and they've always been very kind about actually tracking down that purchase. Even with Apple, if you have an Apple subscription and you see some expense on there that you don't recognize, if you call them, call their customer service, they can tell you exactly who that company is, because sometimes it doesn't match what you thought the purchase was. And so we've cleared up a couple of issues that way, and it turned out it wasn't fraud. It just us not knowing who we were paying money to, which probably isn't good either. So contact the account, dispute the charge. Absolutely dispute the charge. I talked with one congregation member just a couple of days ago and a couple of weeks before that, who had been the victim of one of these overpayment scams and had actually racked up a bunch of charges and failed to report it to the bank or to law enforcement then, and now they're dealing with some credit issues and some legal issues with regard to going after them. So, but you've got to act quickly on this stuff. dispute the charges, and report it to law enforcement. So some resources, if you think your identity's been stolen, these websites have options for you to use if you think you've been the victim of identity fraud. The IRS is one. I've been to their site and see what they've got, and it's very good information there. The Social Security Administration also has a lot of options for you to exercise if you think your identity's been stolen. Your bank, more and more banks are being more proactive and helping out their customers with identity theft because it's costing them billions of dollars every year. And then there's this company called the ITRC, which is the Identity Theft Resolution Center, or Resource Center. They actually provided some training that I took advantage of, and some of the material I got for this lecture teaching came from them. So I'm going to give you their information there. It's the Identity Theft Resource Center. They are a non-profit organization. The website is itrc at idtheftcenter.org. The toll-free number is 888-400-5530. The business hours are Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 5. That's Pacific time. And if you leave a message after hours, they usually respond to you within one business day. They have a lot of resources there to help you as a victim. And they can also talk with you about preventative steps. But I've looked at what they have available, and it's very, very good stuff. And they're nonprofit, which is also very helpful. And the guy that did the teaching that I learned this stuff from was very, very knowledgeable and provided a lot more than I've given you here, but a lot of it was specific to what I do. All right. So I think I want to close with this. So we've talked about scams and scammers and thieves and stuff like that, and it actually takes me back to Genesis 4:7. And if you do not do good, towards the door is a sin. He's lying, and towards you is his desire, and you must rule over him. So these scammers, they're at the door. You know, their desires for you, for your resources, to hurt you, to compromise your identity. And so if you do not do good, if you're not proactive, if you're not paying attention, if you're not taking advantage of the things you can do to protect yourself, then he's going to have you. So that's all I got. So if you have any questions, Shamus Rob is at the podium with a mic. If you have any questions, if you're online, begin typing in your questions online, and I will ask John to tell me this. All right. So
Martha.
What you got?
I'm going to be Janet today. I've
All right.
got several questions.
No, well, then you need to have your ISR with a notebook with all kinds of written notes there.
I'm not quite as good as her.
Okay.
So you had talked about how to unsubscribe to an email. And I have found that on a lot of emails, they'll just under the address, they'll say, click here to unsubscribe.
Yes.
But that usually doesn't work. That usually just allows them to give your email address out to 3 or 4 other people. But then if you go down to the bottom of the email and it says to unsubscribe, click this hyperlink. But you said not to do that.
So don't do it with, so the example I gave you was the Venmo. So what jumped out at me then was Venmo is not a subscription service. It's an app. It's a payment app. So that's what told me that unsubscribe was a no-fly zone there. But if this is something you've been regularly subscribing to, that you're familiar with, and you're confident that that's who the sender is for this, and you want to unsubscribe, then yeah, absolutely do that. But I'll tell you, it's really hard to do that. An example is some subscriptions you may have with Apple that you want to get rid of. Well, some you can and some you can't. So some you've got to wait until it comes back up, and where they give you the option of canceling it. So some you're on the hook for a year or whatever the length of that subscription is.
Well, I think what I'm particularly asking about is like a newsletter that you've subscribed to, or an account that they're going to send you notifications that there's a sale at a store, that kind of thing. So it's okay to click that unsubscribe at the bottom.
Yes, you can do that. Now, if it's not a subscription that's costing you money, it's just a newsletter or a mailing or something like that, go the route of unsubscribe. Try that. And if they're still persisting, which they will do because they want those numbers, if that, then the next option, if you're unsuccessful there, is just send their stuff to your junk folder. And then your phone should forward future ones, or you can set up rules on your phone to send all future emails to your junk folder there.
And my next question is, how do you feel about blocking fact checkers on Facebook? Do you think that's effective?
I only use Facebook to research defendants. Otherwise, I have no footprint on Facebook at all. I don't like Facebook. I think Facebook has done more harm to people's self-esteem in this country than almost anything else. Social media is very dangerous. So that said, because I'm not worried about Facebook canceling me because I canceled them. That said, if you respond to any inquiry, like a fact check or anything, then you're on a list. Then they have sent out a hook and you have taken that hook, which means that you are subject to get more stuff like that, wanted or unwanted.
Well, you can go into your privacy settings and check for certain words and block, and there will be a list of those people that come up and you can block them. But I don't use Facebook very much. I don't post very much, and I usually are only checking MTOI or specific friends. So you just don't feel that it's a necessary thing to do?
You have to decide what you want to do for your social media footprint. So if that's something you want to take advantage of, that you want to participate in, you can do that. That's up to you. But I have very, very strong feelings about social media, particularly for young people, because there's so many trolls, there's so many bullies, there's so many anonymous people who do nothing but drive down the self-esteem of people, which is increasing to the suicide rate among adolescents in this country. So I've got real problems with social media generally, but that's my personal opinion. But if you want to take advantage of the settings to filter that, yeah, absolutely do that.
Okay, and what's the app that you use to check phone numbers an app on your phone where you can check phone numbers?
The app I use is Hiya, Hiya. And I have a different app I use for privacy. I have additional one, but if you want to ask me afterwards what that is, I'll tell you, because I don't want to be accused of plugging for anybody in particular, because there are others out there, and I don't know them all.
And as far as putting a freeze on your credit report, I used to get countless pre-approvals in the mail. So I did freeze my credit scores, and I get nothing now. It's a great way to avoid that. But what app do you use to freeze and unfreeze it on your phone? I don't know about that app.
Ask me when I'm outside the tent, okay. And I will tell you.
And I guess my next question, my last maybe, is how do you feel about using a scan of your palm for identity purposes, like at the hospital or medical labs, that kind of thing? I really just tell them I don't do that.
It's up to you. It's your data. It's your stuff. It's biometric data. You don't necessarily have control over where that's going or who would have access to it. That's a personal decision on your part. The only biometric data I think I use at all is facial recognition for my phone. I like that. I don't use the thumbprint thing for that because I've seen too many movies where they cut off the person's thumb, and so I'm not going to do that.
Thank you, Pete. I really enjoyed your
You're
presentation.
welcome. Thank you. I'd like to defer to Rabbi Tom. who the first time I played on the praise team, Rob told me there was a message in the chat wondering, wow, Rabbi Tom's playing drums now. Yes. Did you know that?
No, I don't pick up sticks on the Sabbath.
That's right, I do.
Okay. All right. But every once in a while on my laptop, something pops up, says, your computer has been shut down, and call this number. And of course, I know it's a scam. Well, I've learned that if I shut my laptop off and leave it off for 10 or 20 seconds, it disappears. But I have to confess, one time I did call the number just to see what it was about. And I kept the guy on the phone for 15 minutes. He finally got a little irritated with me. And I told him to take the towel off his head and go back where he came from. But he had a very thick accent, you know.
Yep.
But he said, I am from Microsoft.
Yep.
And so it's a persistent thing. I can't get right. But my, whatever it is I have for a safeguard won't detect it.
So a pop-up blocker should block a lot of that stuff.
Oh.
See Chris sitting out there. Chris can probably help me out with more of that stuff. But usually I have a pop-up blocker that keeps those things from popping up.
Oh, okay.
But you're right. You know, when you get those things, you're correct to recognize it as a scam and just don't respond to it.
Yeah. I did one time. I had fun with them, but shouldn't have done that. But anyhow, thank you, Mr. Pete, for this very valuable information.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Kathy's coming up.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for this. I kind of need your brain downloaded in mine. But I had a couple of questions. So I have an Apple. And ever since I lost it and got a new one, and then Spectrum did what they did and downloaded a bunch of stuff glitchy. And someone here who's a really good IT guy says, it's not just you, it's Apple. And my next door neighbor has gone an hour and a half up to Knoxville twice. So my screen's doing like this whenever I sent out. So I was thinking something was on my Shabbat Shalom texts or whatever. And it kind of went away and now it's back again. And my question, well, many, but you know, you can call them because she had called and they'll have you, and then they'll ask you for these Apple guru people, and when you call Apple, they will have control of your device or your computer. In the past, when I had someone else's computer, they take that over, and so is that safe? Because
That's different because you know specifically who you're dealing with. So if you have called Apple support or you have dealt directly with them and you're confident that's who that is, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. The scams happen when you have somebody posing as that who you have reached out to through some phishing email or something like that. But it's a safe bet if you're contacting Apple support directly from a number you have verified is them. That's different.
yeah, so I don't know if you have any resources, but like I said, I talked to our top IT guy, and he even went out to all of his resources and said, it's an Apple problem. And my next door neighbor went up twice, and then you pay, you get there and you're there for hours and hours and hours, and they don't fix this.
I haven't had that problem. From what you're telling me, it sounds like, something's in your phone. It sounds like,
Right.
Virus or something's in your
stuff.
phone.
Yeah. So maybe I'll have to.
But they can be well hidden, but some folks are better than others at detecting those things. It may have resulted from something you clicked on that got embedded that's tracking your information. There's all kinds of ways to explain what is happening, but I'm not so much an IT guy as a fraud guy.
Yeah.
So
Professionals. So, and I paid, I went to the local guy here and then I paid $50, and they backed everything out of my computer and did a reboot, and it did not correct the thing. And so then I was out that money. And anyway, not fun. And then I've gotten some things that actually had Apple on them or other things. They'll come up, clean your phone. And I'm the first one to say I'm lazy with this because I don't want this. I want to go back to pen and pencil and person-to-person stuff, but that's not the world we live in. And,
Well, I noticed there have been some occasions where you do an Apple update and your phone gets glitchy, and then they have to do another update to fix that. That happens.
okay, all right.
But if you're keeping it updated regularly, then on balance, it should be okay. But it sounds like something that's may or may not be related to an update issue. But again, that's outside my area.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for all of that.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
This is a little nerve-wracking. It's the first time I'm up here.
It's my first time up here, too. Well, I'm usually sitting over there. So this is a little different.
So my name's Mindy.
Hi, Cindy.
I was a victim of a scam where they used every single tactic you talked about. Now,
So it all sounded very familiar.
oh yeah, the whole thing. I was like, yep, they did that. Yep, they did that. Yep, they did that. You feel a lot of shame and guilt about it, that you fell for it. And so I didn't contact, I changed all my accounts on my computer and contacted the bank. They got into my business account. That was the only account they got into. So, but I never contacted the credit card company. They had me do what you said. They went into my account. They showed the payment went to Israel, and then they switched me to the World Bank and the FDIC. So, so my question is, I contacted the bank. The bank changed my accounts, but I never contacted the credit card company, which is where they took the payment from my credit card. Is there a statute of limitations that I could go back and change that now? Because I feel like I cooperated with them, so I have to pay it back.
Did you report it to law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay. So statute of limitations is secure. So it's when you report it to law enforcement. So that hasn't run. Probably hasn't run.
Well, it just happened last June.
Yeah, absolutely reported to your credit card company. But where was the money taken from? Was it taken from your bank account?
It was apparent. I didn't even know I could do this. I took a loan on my credit card, and then they had me send it through Bitcoin and gift cards. So the police were able to investigate the gift cards,
Right.
and they said they had them on camera, but they couldn't see their faces.
Okay. So were you actually out any money?
Of $4,500.
Okay. And did anybody make good on that? Did you ever get any of that back?
No.
Report it to your credit card company and give them the copy of their police report and the case number and all that stuff.
And what do I say to them?
What do you say to them?
Yeah.
Just what you told me. You got took. And tell them what happened. You made a police report, and this is what happened. I reported to law enforcement, and I'm letting you know. And, see if they will also investigate it, and they either will or will not make good. It's in the fraud cases I have worked where identity theft was an issue, which is not really what you're dealing with here. But in those cases, those companies have, for the most part, not entirely, not all of them, but have, for the most part, made good. They made their customer whole because they want to, they recognize that this happens. So, yeah, but absolutely report it to them. You're not out anything by reporting it to them, and you may get some of that back.
Okay.
Because right now you're paying for it. I mean, it's
I
out of
am.
your pocket. Yeah, report it to them quickly.
Okay.
All right.
As soon as I get back. Thank you.
Okay. Sir,
Morning, Pete.
Morning.
Thank you for all your information. You mentioned cookies.
Yes.
Delete your cookies. Is it hard to do?
No.
Okay.
You can usually do it in your settings. Go to your settings, and there should be something to
All right.
delete your cookies, just like you can delete your history.
Well, I'll grab one of these teenagers. They could figure it out for me.
Yep.
Second thing, I just want to share a quick experience. I got hacked. Norton antivirus. Your subscription is expired. Click. Next thing I know, they've got my bank website up on my computer. It looked exactly like TD Bank. And long story short, before I gave them the money that they said I overpaid them, somebody called up the bank directly on a landline, and the bank says, no, there's no activity going on in your bank. And we told the guy, kibosh. And he told us that we weren't being honest, and it's trying to make us feel real bad that, I wasn't a man of integrity. But it was amazing how much they did with one click of a button.
Yeah.
And I have one other suggestion. I think Congress ought to make a bill. They have bills that say you can't drink until you're 18. They have bills on other things you can't do until you're 18. Let's keep these phones away from all these kids that have access to everything they want to get their hands on and don't even know what they're getting into. It's sad when you talk about social media and what's going on out there, but phones should be for phones, in my opinion. Thank you for your time, Pete.
I agree. They don't belong in schools, and they don't belong in prisons. And I think South Carolina just passed a law to prohibit phones from being in prisons. But a lot of these folks, a lot of prisoners, they don't have phones, but they got tablets, which have internet access, and they're able to communicate. So you got some of these scams are originating inside the prison system. Chris.
Hi, Mr. Pete. Thank you for your teaching. Definitely going to help a lot of people. I want to underscore what you talked about with the password managers. So I have mine set up so that I have one password manager, and I know one master password, and it's like 14 characters. And then I make every single website I have another 14-character password that's saved into my password manager. So when I click on the website, you can autofill the password, and as long as you trust the password manager, then you don't have to remember, I don't know how many passwords I have, but it's a long list of like dozens of different websites, and I don't have to think about what password I have for a particular website. So that's a really good thing to do. And then also there's identity theft protection that you can buy. It's really cheap compared to other insurances. And on top of going to the government and going and credit report, fixing all that way legally, but also that is also an added protection that you can get. I know my company has it for free through my being working there, but also you can find it online, places like that.
Right. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because you mentioned autofill. And so autofill on your phone is one thing through a password manager. It's something else entirely different if you're going to a website like Amazon, where you log on and automatically generates your password. Be careful about those because those aren't necessarily a problem. But in addition to that, linked to that is any of these sites, like it's Amazon is the one that comes to mind all the time, but where you have all your payment data stored. Be very careful about that. The recommendation is that you do not store your credit card information on any of those shopping sites. Enter it manually each time you're going to make a purchase. Because if they get hacked, they've got all your banking information, and your money's going to be gone before you realize it. So again, for those of us who don't want to take the time to drag the credit card out of our pocket and type in all that stuff, well, you're protecting your information though. So I would avoid, for any of your shopping sites, I would remove all your banking data from that and just enter it manually each time.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of times when I fill in something, it'll be like, do you want to save this data to your browser or something? But I would say no to that. So, yeah, and so, but yeah, your information is really important. I and my friend have helped people at Beth Shalom over the last few years with different issues with the computers, and because I'm a software engineer and he works in IT help desk, so we help people for free, just work on, especially for MTOI things like trying to get into Zoom meetings or any tech issues. You can come to us, and we can usually help. So.
I think last Sukkot, there was a guy, I think came from Germany, and he had an issue with his data being hacked, and he was trying to deal with them indirectly. I think you helped him out with that last year.
Yeah, me and my friend have helped a lot of people, just free, like, surface level things, and we might refer you to other people, like, who actually are going to get money from you to fix something on your computer if it's something like more difficult. But we do a lot of simple things. So,
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for what you're coming up here and doing. And this question, I don't know. I was just asking, is this teaching going to be on the regular YouTube Employ channel with everything else?
My understanding is it's going to be along with all the other broadcasts that have been done this week.
Okay. When that's done, is it possible to have a link to that PowerPoint that you used in the where if you tap on the click on the title of the of this on YouTube, and it gives you several links that you for normally it's shopping, things like that, but is it possible to put a link to have that PowerPoint there?
I got to think about that because some of my information is on there.
Oh,
like
okay.
my email address and stuff. So, but we'll discuss that. I'll discuss that with Elder Billy and see if that's something we want to do.
Okay, I just thought that would be helpful. Along in the same, what is it? I guess the same vein of what you're talking about. We had an incident where my wife's, her mom's house. We were not living in it at the time, and we're trying to decide what we were going to do. And one time I happened to go on Zillow and was looking around, and it was listed for sale. And I was like, sweetie, did you put your house up for sale? And somebody had went in and done a quick deed claim on it, and we had to go through they had already gone in, and when we went over to the house, the police, we called them, and they told, well, you can't go in the house. We're not sure you own it, who owns it. So until that's sorted out in the courts, you're not allowed in the house. And they had already emptied out all of our possessions inside of it. We found out afterwards that if you go to the county recorder's office, the registers, that you can put a lock, similar to the lock you have on the on your credit, that you can do the same thing with your property. Not all counties, I don't think, do that, but if your county does that, if you have property that you don't, if you might have some extra, some land or whatever it is, make sure and that you verify with your county if you can lock that down, because there are, they told us, the police in Greenville County told us that it was happening throughout the state of South Carolina. It was becoming very prevalent. So it was something to be aware of.
It's happening a lot in Georgia too, and Georgia had a law that took effect in July to protect property owners from unlawful trespass like that, where you have people that would either go in and squat and stay, or they would be victims of a fraudulent sale. But Georgia has a law that protects the original property owner in that case.
Yes, it's something to look in for all of them, since we're spread throughout throughout the world.
Yep.
So thank you again.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I'm
You're
double
back.
dipping, but I'll be quick. I get a lot of phone calls that are sort of scam, unsolicited, I guess you'd say. And I used to just hang up on them or just get ugly. So now I've started saying, hold on just a minute, let me get something to write on. And I ask the person for their full name, their phone number, and the company that they work for. And then I ask them, how did you get my phone number? And usually they end up hanging up on me. But do you have a better recommendation on what to do to avoid those?
My app screens those. If they're not on my contact list, it goes straight to something else. Now, it'll tell me that I got that call. So if I want to, I can look up the number.
I have an app that does show me if it's suspected scam.
Yep.
But because of my business, I have found that sometimes it'll say spam or scam, and it's actually someone wanting me to do a job for them. So I just about have to answer those phone calls.
Well, I think what you're doing sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Also, what you got to run into is spoofed numbers too. So it's very common for scammers to use numbers that look a lot like something that you should accept. It'll be, for example, my phone number begins with 706-339. So I'll get a lot of those calls that will either show them coming from Augusta or Gainesville or somewhere close to me, thinking that I will answer those, but I don't. I just look up the number, and if it's not something
I wish I could do that, but I get business from all over the United States. So I don't answer calls that are coming from out of the country, or if it's a private number or a blocked identity.
But see, a number from outside the country can be spoofed to look like it's coming from inside the country.
Well, I guess that's a risk I have to take because
There you go.
I have to.
But you're being
have a
proactive.
business.
You're doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you.
I hate I missed part of your presentation. I hope this is not something you've covered. If it is, I apologize. So I oversee the care of an elderly couple. They're in their late 80s, and we have sitters 24/7 with them. And about 2 years ago, I didn't realize their son had not yet taken guardianship over their person and their finances. And so we were still letting them manage some of that, and they would, take out money and do different things. I didn't even know he had a debit card. His son didn't know, but apparently he did. And he took trust in that sitter, and instead of going into the bank himself, he asked the sitter to go in and take out $200. And somehow she figured out what his little pin was. Well, we didn't even know this occurred, but once he was questioned, that's what he said. But we got a statement. We intercepted the mail at some point, me or his son, and there was some visits at an ATM that occurred like at 2 a.m., 4 a.m. Number one, he had never been to an ATM. And this ATM was a county away in a, same bank, but a different county. So their son, $3,000, around $3,400 was taken. And it was at those times, and they had the picture, they were wearing like a COVID mask and a little hat. You could see the hair color and the body build. So the police questioned them, and the sitter was like, well, he gave me the card. So they took it as he willingly let that happen. And even though the son pursued, no, this was fraudulent, we had no knowledge of it, he'd never been to an but the bank would not make good on it. Is there more we can do to get that money back?
So I've worked cases, I've prosecuted cases like that. In those cases, the cases that I prosecuted, you had a caregiver who actually was allowed access to that financial account. But the problem was it was intended directly for the care of that disabled person. But what was happening is they were cleaning out that account. And the way that fraud was prosecuted there was because if they're going to the tattoo shop and then they're spending, $75 treating their family to, burgers, or you track down the expenses. So we were able to identify the expenses that were not directly related to the care of the individual. Now, in that case, that person, it's undisputed, they rightfully had the card. We were contesting the expenses, and it ended up being the criminal charge was exploitation of an elderly or disabled person, and there's lots of definitions that fit into that. Your situation's a little different because the origin of the card and what the circumstances are difficult to prove. The one way you could get to it is figure out who opened that account, who authorized that card. So if you can go there, if it's not the person whose name is on the card, then it's a little easier to prove that those were unauthorized expenses. But I will tell you that property crimes are labor intensive for law enforcement. Larger agencies devote people to that. Smaller agencies generally do not. So you may have a law enforcement agency that may have 4 investigators who handle everything from homicide to bicycle thefts. So you may not get the response you want, depending on how complicated the case is going to be. I'm on the board of a homeowners association, and we had a property management company that took us for $3,000, and we could prove it. They opened accounts in our name with other banks that we had no idea of, and they were, I'm not going to say who they were, but they were essentially laundering money. And the law enforcement agency re-reported it to, opted not to follow up. So, unfortunately, but there are avenues you can do. But in your case, the thing to do would be, where did that account originate? Where did the card originate? And if it didn't originate with that disabled person or that person's guardian, then you have more of a standing to allege fraud. Does that help? Okay. Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Pete. And I'm so thankful that you're doing the work that you're doing in your area to help people. I hope there's a lot of people out there that are coordinating, doing things like you are to follow up on all that. My question, excuse me, is related to your very strong support of multi-factor verification. And I've been reluctant to go that way. I'm very good about changing passwords and making them complex and using another site that stores all my passwords. But in multi-factor, you have to give them your phone number or your email. So what if my phone is damaged? I can't access a website that I need to get to. Let's say like a natural disaster or a storm. You sort of lock yourself out. Now, where's the solution for that?
All right, so I'll give you an example. I have multi-factor identification for my work email. So if I have not used that, or if I'm logging on from a different device to access my county email, the multi-factor identification will pop up. Say, verify you are, enter your password, and they'll give me options, either a phone number to text me the number or an email to send it. So you should have options. So if one or the other is down, so in other words, if I don't have access to my phone or email, I can use either one to satisfy that. It's not just one.
Okay, if that's the way it works, then they're covering that as a potential problem and giving you another source to use. Okay, all right then. Thank you.
Okay. Shalom.
Shalom. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Good. I have a couple questions. First one, my husband actually just called me and said, "Are you listening to Mr. Pete?" I said, "Yes." So he'll create you were talking about using a password manager. So he'll create I like to call them mile-long passwords, that are various, characters and symbols, whatever, numbers, letters, that kind of thing. How easy are those to hack?
They're more difficult. The more unique you have it to you, the more difficult it is for somebody to determine, particularly when you consider how many numbers there are, how many security symbols there are, how many vowels, consonants, all that stuff there are, it becomes more difficult, particularly when you're talking about fully extending the length of it up to 14 characters. So it's the more unique you make it to you and varied from one to another, the less likely it is that it's going to be discovered.
Okay. Another thing that I wanted to mention while I was up here is kind of piggybacking off what Eddie was saying. We actually had a gentleman that showed up at our door one day and was inquiring about our house. We never listed it for sale or for rent or anything. We have a very small house. And they said that they found our house on Craigslist. So I went and looked, and sure enough, somebody listed our house for rent on Craigslist. Of course, I reported it and all that stuff, but it's crazy how people can just get your stuff and post it because they're going online and they're finding your home on older real estate places and then listing it.
That's tough. We have a property next door. It's a vacant lot. We bought it so it would stay a vacant lot. And a couple of times I found people parked on the road in front of there saying, "What are you doing here?" So, well, I'm talking to someone. He's going to, I'm waiting for him to show up to show me this because I'm interested in buying it. I said, no, wrong. Yeah, they can happen. And it's very hard to keep up with it because certainly I'm not going to go on Craigslist for any reason. Certainly not look at my property, but be very proactive about keeping an eye on property you do have. So if you have rental property, if you have vacant property, post it. No trespassing signs is helpful. There was a suggestion about getting with your county clerk, your clerk of court, to do whatever you can do to possibly flag that property that you own it, or check if there's been inquiries on it, and check with real estate sites like Zillow to see if your property is listed.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Shalom, Mr. Pete.
Shalom.
Thank you for your presentations, and I would like to share some issues that I had experienced lately with Venmo, PayPal, and Geek Squad.
Okay, bring the mic right up to your mouth.
So what I did, I called PayPal, I called Venmo, and asked them that those charges are not mine. And after that, I closed all my account. But to date, I'm still receiving purchases, 500, 400, and everything. The latest one was with Geek Squad. So what I did, I went to Best Buy and showed them, look at my messages. I closed my account with you. I never ordered this, and I didn't get anything too, but why is this happening? And they told me that, oh, somebody is just doing this and doing that, but it was my email. It is my phone number. And they said, just ignore it. I said, just like that? So again, I closed my account with them. And one time I got an email that my personal information and everything was in the dark web. I am not a tech savvy, so I said, dark web, what does that mean? So my question is, or what I did was, I block, then I deleted. Is that the right thing to do when you get those emails?
You are always going to get those emails.
Okay.
Because if you get one from Geek Squad and you block that sender, you're going to get another one from somebody else also posing as them. I get them regularly. So as long as your information is out there available for somebody to use, they are going to reach out to you and pose as somebody. So going to Best Buy and complaining to them, you're just annoying them. They didn't send it to you. So yeah, ignore it. Because the right thing, and you did the right thing in going back to verify that those purchases had in fact not taken place. That's the right thing to do, to make sure that your actual account had not been hacked. But those are phishing. They're trying to get you to click on something to correct a mistake you think somebody else made.
It had created fear in me to do shopping online. And one time, my niece was crying because I get a call from my Visa account from Nebraska at 4 o'clock, and I think they knew my activity on that credit card. It was from a dating company, and I'm 65 years old. So I explained to him, I'm 65 years old. I teach in a Christian school. Do you think I need to spend $350 to a dating company? So I said, okay, ma'am, we'll just erase this and everything like that. So what I did, I closed all my credit cards. I just used Discover. And from time to time, I still get from Discover, and I just call them. I said, I didn't charge this. I didn't go to Pennsylvania or somewhere else because I get charges. And I said, I didn't go anywhere.
So be careful about if you get those emails, do not call the number on the email. That's going to be a bogus number. That's going to be the scammer you're calling. Okay? If, let's say, you have a Discover account and you get an email from Discover saying there's this charge. So I didn't make that charge. Do not call that number. You go find the legitimate number for Discover and deal with them directly.
That's what I'm doing right now, sir.
There you go.
And then sometimes if I have big amount of charges like American Airlines, I get a notification right away that, are you the one doing this business right now? So I really appreciate Discover Card, and I'm not promoting Discover Card, but I really appreciate them right now.
Other credit card companies do the same thing. I have a number of cards where they'll verify you're making the purchase.
Yeah, I close all my credit cards now, so this world right now is very scary.
It is.
But thank you, sir, for sharing your experiences.
You're welcome.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, Dal.
Very good information and also a good reminder, but working for the government, I go through those classes every year, and it's exactly what you say. We look for all of those things when we're at work, even on secure lines. But my question is, do you see a lot of scams dealing with, selling property out from people? And is there a way to protect your, the title of your properties? It's out there somewhere, but you hear often that people's title gets changed, and the next thing I know, it's sold out from under them. Do you deal with that?
There was a guy in Columbia County who had a very large estate for sale. It was valued at, I want to say it's $3 million or $6 million, and they were contacted by email from somebody who was an interested buyer, and they submitted what appeared to be legitimate paperwork from attorneys' offices and clerks of court and all that stuff, and the whole thing was done by telephone and email and wire transfers. And by the time this property owner figured out he'd been scammed, he was out $6 million. So there's a right way to do property transactions, and that's in person, face to face, at arm's length, with a closing attorney who has researched the deeds to make sure there's no encumbrances on them. So that's the right way to do it. Anything other than that, unless you're dealing with a firm that you trust to do that, who's going to take the blame and shoulder the responsibility, that's the right way to do it. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I'm back again. I guess I need to reiterate my first question to you. So what I think what I was trying to get after was, how easy is it for people to hack into the password managers?
Generally speaking, people advise that password managers are largely secure. I'm not familiar with cases of password managers getting hacked. I use one. Let's see. There's a site on Mozilla that I use to access prosecutor tracking data, and that uses a password manager, which I change that's something you enter it, and I change it every 30 days. There, I have it on my phone. That appears to be secure. The alternative to that is you storing it somewhere where you can remember it yourself and not relying on anything else. But then how are you going to do it? If you're going to write it down, you're going to lose it, and that's a problem. But everybody else I've talked to has recommended, I think even Chris recommended a password manager as well. Okay. Mr. Bohe.
Hey, shalom, Pete.
Shalom.
I kind of forgot my tin hat at home, but I heard you mention earlier about you only knew one person that was off grid.
Yeah. Is it 2 now?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. But I mean, is that a viable option if you want to stay secure?
Sure. If you are not going to have an online presence, if you're not going to be on social media, if you're not going to have online accounts, if you're not going to use email or text messaging, then there's no reason for you to be online. You would have no footprint. The only thing you would have is your phone to send and receive calls. But if you're using it as a smartphone to research things and communicate with people and pay bills and stuff like that, then you're going to have a digital footprint. So it depends on what you want to do. You want to have more convenience to have access to more things at your fingertips, then yeah, you're going to have some exposure.
I don't have, well, here's an interesting thing that happened. I opened up a business account last month. Before I got from the bank home, somebody got made a $37 charge on that brand new card. So I went right back to the bank and told them about it. They issued me a new card. But that, and their explanation was, well, somebody was probably it was an Amazon thing. And said maybe they just typed in one wrong number and just happened to, I don't know what the odds of that would be, but yeah.
Yeah, that's odd.
Bizarre. And they put it back on my account and all that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Morning.
Morning.
Thanks for the workshop. Apologies, I'm a little bit late getting here. I'm a long
Bring the mic up to your mouth.
and I'm also a long-time IT professional, and I just wanted to share a couple things, from my experience in the field. So apologies if we've already covered this, but one rule that I always use and I impress on anyone that I know that's doing any of this kind of stuff is never provide information on an incoming phone call. I don't care who they say they are, when it comes up on your phone, and don't even trust the caller ID.
Right.
No matter who they say they are, no matter what they know, because they can know actually quite a lot before they call you, and they can be very convincing. If it's an incoming phone call, don't provide any information. I'll call you right back. Go to the official website, get the number there, and then call them. I don't know if you covered that, but what do you think about that?
I talked in some about independent verification, and that would apply to incoming phone calls.
I have a question. Do you have any experience with services like Erase Me? Are those worth looking into?
Some limited experiences. You're talking about clearing your footprint out there, clearing
Correct.
sites that have that. Yeah, there are some, like the ID protection company that I use has an additional subscription where they'll go in and look for you everywhere and remove you essentially from places that you don't want to be. You can do that. It can be expensive to do that, and if that's what you want to do, it may be worth it to you to go to that extra expense. But you can also research to see where your identity is and do some of that stuff yourself. But that's a little limited.
Okay, and thanks. And the other thing I wanted to mention, you were talking about, property scams. I don't know if everybody knows or not, but there was a guy recently, I think it was about a year ago, who literally tried to steal Graceland. And they actually got pretty far into the process, and it took the owners a little bit of legal maneuvering to get out of it. So they can be really, really sophisticated. And there was one other thing I was going to mention, but I forgot. So.
Marlene.
Hey, Mr. Pete. So I have not watched the entire presentation. I apologize. I've been running around. But anyway, a quick question I want to ask you. My sister is having an issue with her husband that's starting to have dementia symptoms. And so in the past, he has been a person that, what do I want to say? He's an opportunist. And so within the past few years, he's been getting a lot of mail and different things saying, oh, you won, whatever. Publishers Clearinghouse has selected you, whatever. I mean, he keeps getting these letters. And, they always want him to like buy them an iPhone or buy some gift cards or give him access to his bank account or all the stuff. So my sister is literally at her wit's end because she doesn't know how to stop him from giving away money to these people. And it's been going on for several years now. And he's probably given away like $15,000 already to probably more than that already now, to these scammers. And she's, do you know of any like specific way, like what she can do? Because what he'll do is he'll write down their phone numbers and call them back, and so she doesn't know how. I mean, she's already gotten like guardianship and done different things, and once she knows that he's given bank information, then she'll go close that account. But she's really having a hard time corralling this because he's a willing participant. So they can't get money back because he's willingly giving it to the people, And so I don't know. Do you have any ideas of what to do, like when it's an elder that's has a dementia issue and they're just giving away this money?
So that's something you as a family need to get together and address. There are legal mechanisms available for you to reduce his access to his funds where you make a showing that he's not competent to manage those funds. But that's not my area of law. That's more civil. Sometimes it's related to probate court, depending on the state you're in. But there are mechanisms you can put in place to do that. But the family needs to get together. And you say she's got guardianship. It may be a matter of expanding her reach and reducing his access.
Okay. I'll ask her to watch this. I'll clip this out.
I can tell you she should watch this, but it's not addressed in this because that's a little outside of what we're talking about here. But specifically for what you're talking about, there is a way to go about that. I would talk with in Georgia it's probate court. I don't know what it would be in Tennessee or the state you're talking about.
She's in Chicago.
Okay, well I would recommend she talk to the clerk of court in the county she's in, and for her to explain her problem there and see if somebody can advise her how to go about taking more control of what he's got.
Okay, yeah, sounds great.
But the whole family should be in on that,
yeah.
Because otherwise down the road you end up within people pointing fingers at each other about now somebody else is stealing his money.
Mm-hmm.
So the family should be together on that.
Okay, thank you.
Another double dipper.
Okay.
So I personally had a bank that was in California and Washington, and I was always able to go into the branch. Unfortunately, I was told in 2019 that there would be a branch here in Cleveland or Chattanooga, and it's like 45 minutes to go to the branch. So then you're doing your banking on this and talking about having less of a ability for them to. And so do you have, there's no other way. I mean, I have a local deal that I go in, and now they've gotten rid of all their real tellers. they now have audio tellers, visual tellers. So
My banking, well, I do both. With the city where we live in Cleveland, Georgia, we don't have a branch for our bank. The nearest one is going to be in Gainesville, or there's actually a branch or two where I work in Canton, and there are other branches. So, but the majority of our business is done with that company online, and it's been very secure and it's been very easy to do. But for major things, we'll go to a branch, usually I think in Dawsonville is where we go. With yours, where you don't have anything in this state at all, then you've got to consider whether or not that's something you want to keep. Generally speaking, the banks are very often targeted by thieves, the resources they have through their customers. So they're usually very good about following up or backing up or working with you on any fraud that you may be a victim of. So the larger the bank, usually the better. However, there are some glaring exceptions to some banks, some companies, and their customer service. And I'm not going to mention any of them, but it's not hard to find out who they are. Banking locally has some advantages in that you can have a face-to-face relationship with someone. The recommendation would be to find one that has a solid online presence and local branches so you have alternatives.
right, yeah, it's rough. And this might be out of your purview. And again, thank you so much for doing this. I think it should be a yearly thing if Rabbi and you'd be willing. But so it's again a laziness thing because I don't like computers. But there'll be clean up your photos, and they'll have a clean sweep or whatever. Do you recommend any of those, or you check with Apple if you have an Apple? So you know how you'll just do click, 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 and they're duplicate, instead of spending 500 million hours doing that.
That's usually something that's generated on the app or the phone or the device itself to assist you in clearing up your storage space. And that's usually a safe bet. You're not putting anything at risk by deleting duplicates. Rob, can I go to, John, is there anything on live stream?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
Do you want to do that now?
Sure, yes, please.
I'll make a comment. I work in an IT-related field, and we have to do regular trainings and stuff. But a big one that I see now is, and you mentioned it in the talk of I don't save passwords directly on websites where you can say remember me. Well, no, don't do that, because again, if somebody has access to that. And another point that I also don't do is I have, as much as possible, two-factor or multi-factor authentication set up on accounts. And they also will do that where you can set it so that it remembers it and it doesn't do it every time. And I don't like that. That's I would definitely not recommend bypassing your two-factor that way. So. I have a lot of comments just to add to this about, again, password length, the longer the better, random passwords, things like that. I've even in the past, I did use a password manager. It was a little complex for me, so I need to get back to using it, but I would just kind of randomly hit keys on the keyboard and store it. So I wouldn't even know what the password was. So those types of things. First question from Shelly Woods, and this is in relation to a scam. She said, what do you do when you've purchased an item and you're sent something that is not what you ordered or paid for?
Depends on where you bought it. If you purchase something and what you received was not what you ordered, there usually is a mechanism for returning that. I know Amazon's very good about that. Even if you get something that just isn't what you intended it to, they're very good on their return stuff. When you've purchased an item and you're sent something that is not what you ordered or paid for, return it. And also, if it's clearly something that is not, if you ordered a blue bear and they sent you an orange Caterpillar, those are two entirely different things. Then you may want to go ahead and challenge that expense or that purchase with whatever your payment mechanism was.
All right, next question from James Coletti. How do you do a background check on yourself?
Usually sometimes you can go to law enforcement and do that. There are some agencies that will do that for you. There's also some websites where you can do your own background checks. You're going to pay for those. You'll even pay for them in law enforcement. They'll charge you a nominal fee for that. You can usually check your driving history. Sometimes if you have an online account, you can request your own driving history on that account, on that site. Those are some starters.
All right, from Edwin and Carmen, how can we do our best to limit our children's access to social media as they grow?
Yeah, good luck with that. I think you have to be able to monitor it. If you're going to allow them to have it, you need to be able to monitor it. You need to be able to monitor who they're talking to, who is reaching out to them, what they are posting, what they are watching. How do you do that? Some phones, when you get phones for them, you can put limiters on those. But I will tell you that adolescents are very good about figuring out how to get around parental controls. But I think you just have to do your best to be diligent. I mean, if you provided the device, then you should be able to control their access.
All right, from Helen Newkirk, I've been dealing with identity, I think she meant theft, for quite a while, and from time to time I get an alert and I call to talk about it. I'm protecting my stuff, but I feel it's not enough. How can I protect my identity?
So there are companies out there and apps out there that provide identity protection. Chris mentioned that he subscribes to that. I subscribe to another one as well. They do a very good job of picking up on stuff like that. I've gotten alerts from them about certain usernames that have been spotted on the dark web. That's part of it. We also talked about freezing your credit. That also helps protect your identity, protects your resources. Time to time I get an alert and I call to talk about it. You are protecting your stuff. So be proactive on it and follow all the steps that we talked about there with checking your account statements and freezing your credit and all that.
All right, and this one's from Rumble, from C4. What about RFID sleeves for your cards?
So it used to be a thing back in the day where people would go by folks and, scan their cards. So I've got a sleeve for mine which has aluminum in the inside because I won't wear an aluminum hat. So I put them around my cards here. But those generally protect. Some people got that, some didn't. So those are generally pretty good about it, but I didn't even know that that's a thing anymore. And one thing I didn't talk about was skimmers too. Skimmers are devices that a lot of hackers are putting to substitute for devices at point of sale, to where actually when you put in your credit card information, it's recording that. And there are people who are able to duplicate a card from that. So be careful about skimmers. Make sure that whatever you're inserting your card into is secure. It's not wiggly or wobbly. But yeah, those sleeves are perfectly okay to use. It's not going to hurt your card.
All right, from Shakara Arnold, what are your thoughts about using the suggested passwords that pop up when opening an account?
I use some of those. Apple is good about suggesting ones, and I look at those when they come up, and those check all the boxes on secure. Some sites, and Apple is one of them, where when you go to enter a suggested password, they'll tell you if it's weak or strong or very strong. So yeah, those are not bad things. The problem is, for example, when I tried to create a Rumble account to watch that, it went me through that stuff, and I agreed to it, and it created my account, but it didn't store that password anywhere. So when I went to get on the account, it wouldn't let me on. So, if you're going to do that, I would suggest actually you writing that down and then putting it somewhere where you can remember it or have it securely. But the suggested passwords are not necessarily a bad idea. Sometimes they're very good.
All right, from Morgan Gervais. In this work from home era, employment scams are high. Scammers pose as employers and easily gain access to your identification via supposed HR onboarding after making you a job offer. How do we protect ourselves from employment related scammers?
Independently verify the source. So if they say they're from Westinghouse, call Westinghouse. If they say they're from a headhunter that Westinghouse uses, look those people up, check for scams associated with them, but independently verify.
All right, from Donna Morgan. What is the correct procedure for a text saying that you purchased something with your PayPal account? I do not have a PayPal account and did not purchase anything. I reported it as a scam.
You did exactly what you should do, is report that, copy that, send that to PayPal. So if you go to the PayPal site, there will be a section in there on reporting fraud or phishing.
And this is the last one we've got for now from Julia S. Are apps such as Password Keeper on your phone safe? I have one and use a master password to open my app. Thank you.
Password Keeper sounds a lot like a password manager. I think it's going to depend on the make of that phone or what your software is on that as to whether or not it's going to be secure. It sounds like to me it's probably okay. I hate to be so waffly on it, but I think you're probably okay if it's a reliable phone or reliable software. All right, you're up.
Shalom. I was in the back listening, and I just had a few comments on previous people's questions, if I may. There was one who was asking about elder abuse, like stolen money. Even if the cops can't do anything, still report it to APS, Adult Protective Services for your area, because then there's a record of something happening, and they might not be able to get a job in that field again. I've been in the field of elder care and people with disabilities since 2018, and with that record of reporting to Adult Protective Services, they're not going to be able to get a job in that field anymore. And then for Marlene, depending on the money source, if it's Social Security, you can go right to Social Security and say, we need to make a judgment that he is not able to manage his money, and then apply to be his representative payee. And then you can help him manage his money that way.
That may work, but
But it depends on where the money comes from.
Well, that depends. With Social Security, you may not be able to do that online. That may mean a trip to the office, and they may require some other independent verification to back up what you're saying.
Right. It's a process, but it at least gets the ball rolling. And like I said, it's not always online. It might take a phone call. It might take an in-person visit, but I hope that helps someone.
Okay. Anyone else? John, anything more online?
Hey, Pete.
Hey.
This was back in, it would have been January through April of 23. I had been listening through your teaching here and there, and the story of mine is a employment scam. And it was somebody that was claimed to be in this local area who was a wealthy gentleman who found my information with my property maintenance background, hired me to basically take care of his property and maintain it. And then when he was going to come, and I'd prepare food, get food, and just basically be caretaker. And it was this whole process of several weeks. And once he got my information on Indeed, we exchanged emails, and that's how he, hired me. And this elaborate thing where he sent me 2 checks for $2,500. And I looked up the sender's address on the check, and it took me to a place in Florida. It was on Google Map and everything. I mean, it looked legitimate. It was a business. And I went to my bank. I went to Regions, and they're like, "Dad, this is a scam." If I would have cashed the checks, I would have been on the hook for the money. Yeah. So that's
maybe
life example. How in depth it can go, and rabbit trail, and then be a scam.
Yep.
So.
John, anything?
Hello. Yep. We got one more from Oliver Hersey. Would you putting a text file of all your passwords and usernames on your computer?
That's fine unless your computer gets hacked, and then they have access to all that stuff. So if you're going to do that, password protect that file with something that's not stored on the same place. That's probably okay. Not as a sticky note either, where everybody can see. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, I think that
Pete,
concludes. Oh, you got
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, right.
I was just waiting to the
Oh,
end.
I'm sorry.
Just a couple things. So user agreements. When you're downloading apps, you get those big, long. It's like Kathy kept saying, I'm just lazy. You know, it's like you just scroll through quick, and then are you just giving access to anything because you're not reading it?
You're agreeing to stuff, and you're agreeing to arbitration. You're agreeing to all kinds of stuff with regard to your data. That you're agreeing that they can sell your data, that they can provide it to third parties. User agreements are generally in other words, in order for you to use this service, you're agreeing to all this stuff, and it's on everything. You can if there's an opt out, you can opt out, but that may limit any or all of your access to that thing. But yeah, that's standard. It's just like a big cookie, essentially. It's the same thing.
All right, and then the next one is I've seen that a lot, and I don't necessarily do. But in Google, when you go in there and you Google something, the first 10 sites are, if you don't look, it's a sponsored site, and now hackers they're just copying that, and you're clicking on those. So whatever it's worth, go all the way down to the official site, because if not, you're clicking on just like you're clicking on any hyperlink.
That's right, and it's not a bad idea to delete your history and delete your searches as well.
I just wanted to share a couple of things that have helped me out. As an IT professional, I have to, like for the company that I work with, I often have to go out and get competing bids for services and things like that. And more, all of these vendors require you to go on their website and create a user account and do all of this stuff just to get a price. And then they want you to make sure, because they're trying to capture your information so they can sell it. So I have a spam email account, and the only thing I use it for is for exactly that kind of thing. Okay, I just want to get a price for replacing a window, and I give them my, at one point it was like no thanks at inbox.com, or it'll be no thanks something or no spam. And then I'll create the account, and then I'll go to my spam email and open it up, and one of the first ones that will be on there will be the one that I just signed up for, and I'll use that verification, and that'll be the last time I use it. And then the next time, that email account will just collect hundreds of emails, like per week even. And so I would recommend doing that. And then another thing is that, I have had some experience working with larger banks, and some of them, they do help, but not all of them. But what I did notice is that with a credit union, because I have a couple of credit unions, I can pick up the phone, call the credit union, and talk to a person. And with most big banks, that's either not possible, or it will take you at least 10 minutes to get someone to talk to. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, thank you. Who's out here? I don't see Elder. Oh, there's Elder Billy. All right, I will turn this over to Elder Billy. Thank you for all your questions, and thank you for your attendance.
Awesome. You can give Mr. Pete a hand again. It's a great presentation. And yes, you will be able to find it on our M2I website, and he'll talk later about how he wants to share and the information he wants to share. But just to let you know, you have a pause button on your screen when you go back and watch it. So you can pause it, take notes, as I oftentimes do. And I definitely will do it with this one as well. So very, very useful and insightful information. Please use it. Because when you call here, guess who we're going to send you to if he has time? To Mr. Pete. All right? I was explaining at the beginning, we have about 2 or 3 per month. 2 or 3 per month from M2I worldwide that we give calls from all countries. Everywhere you can imagine, people are getting scammed in these various ways. And the thing that is useful to us is each time a new one comes out, now we'll be able to filter it to Mr. Pete, see if he's seen it. Because I've heard some today that I wasn't aware of. But many of them I was aware of because you guys experienced this. So be very careful. All right. Thank you again, Mr. Pete, for the wonderful presentation. Just a note for the continuance of our celebration. The feast has ended, but we're still celebrating throughout today and tomorrow through Shabbat. We need 5 volunteers for janitorial. I know there's not many in the room, but we need 5 volunteers. You can call the coordinator hotline if you want to volunteer, but we need 5 volunteers. See Miss Marlene, she's in the back of the tent waiting for you guys. If you're here, if you're not here, please call the coordinator hotline because somebody will be waiting to fill those spots. All right, so we got a break. We got out a little early, so you got a break for lunch, and then we'll see you back here this evening for dinner. Have a great afternoon, great lunch, and we'll see you back later.